Hey, Reddit. I never thought I'd be the kind of person to post something like this, but here I am. I guess I just need to get this off my chest. My name's Emily, and I'm 28 years old. I live in a small town in Ohio, and up until a few weeks ago, I thought I had my life pretty much figured out. I was dating a guy named Jake, sweet, dependable, and the kind of man you bring home to your parents. But something about our relationship always felt off. Like we were going through the motions. It all started on a Friday night. Jake had been working late, again. He's an accountant, so tax season is always brutal for him. I was sitting at home, scrolling through Instagram, when my phone buzzed. It was a text from my coworker, Ryan. "Hey, Emily. You busy tonight?" Ryan and I had always had this tension. You know the kind, lingering glances, inside jokes, the occasional brush of hands when we passed each other in the office. But I'd never acted on it. I wasn't that kind of person. Or at least, I didn't think I was. I stared at the text for what felt like forever before typing back. "Not really. What's up?" "I'm bored. Want to grab a drink?" I hesitated. Jake wouldn't be home for hours, and it was just a drink, right? Nothing wrong with that. So I told myself. "Sure. Where?" "I'll pick you up. Be there in 10. And just like that, I was throwing on a jacket and sneaking out of the house like a teenager. When Ryan pulled up in his black Mustang, I felt a rush of adrenaline. He was everything Jake wasn't, confident, a little reckless, and undeniably attractive. "Hey, stranger," he said with that smirk of his as I slid into the passenger seat. "Hey," I replied, trying to sound casual. We drove to this dive bar on the edge of town, the kind of place where no one would recognize us. The conversation flowed easily, just like it always did at work. But there was something different about tonight. The way he looked at me, the way his hand lingered on my arm when he laughed, it was intoxicating. By the time we left the bar, I was tipsy and giddy, and Ryan suggested we go for a drive. I didn't think twice. We ended up at this secluded spot by the lake, the kind of place teenagers go to make out. Ryan parked the car and turned to me, his eyes dark and intense. The engine hummed softly, and the only light came from the dashboard, casting a faint glow on his face. "Emily," he said softly, "I've wanted to do this for so long." Before I could respond, he leaned in and kissed me. And I kissed him back. I know. I'm a terrible person. But in that moment, it felt like everything I'd been missing with Jake was right there in Ryan's arms. The passion, the excitement, the danger, it was all so intoxicating. His hands moved to my waist, pulling me closer, and I let myself get lost in the moment. The leather seats of his Mustang felt cold against my skin, but his touch was warm, electric. I could hear the sound of the lake in the distance, the faint rustle of leaves in the wind, and the soft hum of the car's engine. It was like time had stopped. But then, reality hit me like a punch to the gut. I pulled away, my heart racing. "Ryan, we can't do this," I whispered, my voice trembling. He looked at me, his eyes searching mine. "Why not?" "Because I'm with Jake," I said, though the words felt hollow even as I said them. Ryan sighed and leaned back in his seat, running a hand through his hair. "Yeah, I know. But, don't you ever feel like something's missing? Like you're just going through the motions?" His words hit too close to home. I did feel that way. I had for a while. But that didn't make this right. "I don't know," I said, looking down at my hands. I can't do this to him." Ryan nodded, but he didn't look convinced. "Okay," he said quietly. "I get it." We sat in silence for what felt like forever, the the weight of what had just happened hanging heavy in the air. Finally, Ryan started the car and drove me home. When we pulled up to my house, I hesitated before getting out. "Ryan." "Yeah?" "This can't happen again," I said, my voice firm. He nodded, but there was something in his eyes, something that made me wonder if he really meant it. "Okay," he said. "It won't." I got out of the car and walked up to my front door, my heart pounding in my chest. As soon as I stepped inside, I saw Jake asleep on the couch, a blanket draped over him. He looked so peaceful, so innocent. And I felt like the worst person in the world. The next few days were a blur. I couldn't look Jake in the eye, and every time my phone buzzed, I panicked, thinking it was Ryan. But he didn't text me. Not that night, not the next day, not even at work. It was like nothing had happened. At first, I was relieved. Maybe he felt as guilty as I did. Maybe we could just pretend it never happened. But as the days went on, I started to feel angry. Why had he kissed me if he didn't want anything more? Was I just some kind of game to him? By the end of the week, I couldn't take it anymore. I cornered him in the break room at work. "We need to talk," I said, my voice low. He looked at me like I was crazy. "About what?" "About what happened," I hissed. "You can't just kiss me like that and then pretend nothing happened." Ryan sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "Look, Emily, I didn't mean for things to go that far. I was drunk, you were drunk, it was a mistake." "A mistake." The word cut deeper than I expected. "So that's it?" I asked, my voice shaking. "You're just going to act like it never happened?" "What do you want me to do?" he snapped. "You're with Jake. I'm not going to be the guy who ruins that." I didn't know what to say. He was right, of course. I was with Jake. But that didn't make it hurt any less. I walked away, feeling more confused than ever. Part of me wanted to forget about Ryan and focus on fixing things with Jake. But another part of me couldn't stop thinking about that night in his car, the way he looked at me, the way he made me feel. Things with Jake were strained. I tried to act normal, but every time he touched me, I felt like a fraud. I kept telling myself that I just needed time, that the guilt would fade eventually. But it didn't. One night, Jake and I were sitting on the couch watching TV when he turned to me and said, "Emily, is everything okay? You've been distant lately." I froze. How could I tell him the truth? How could I admit that I'd betrayed him? "I'm fine," I lied, forcing a smile. "Just stressed with work, I guess." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't believe me. The tension between Jake and me grew thicker with each passing day. I could feel him watching me, studying me, like he was trying to figure out what was wrong. But I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth. Every time I thought about it, my stomach twisted into knots. Meanwhile, Ryan was everywhere. At work, in my thoughts, even in my dreams. I'd catch him glancing at me during meetings, and I'd quickly look away, my face burning. It was like we were trapped in this weird, unspoken dance, and I didn't know how to make it stop. One afternoon, I was sitting at my desk, staring blankly at my computer screen, when Ryan walked by. He paused, leaning against the doorway. "Hey," he said, his voice casual. "You got a minute?" I hesitated, then nodded. "Yeah. What's up?" He glanced around to make sure no one was listening, then stepped closer. "Look, I know things have been weird between us. But I just wanted to say I'm sorry. I shouldn't have put you in that position." His apology caught me off guard. I didn't know what to say. "It's fine," I mumbled, even though it wasn't. Ryan sighed and ran a hand through his hair. "No, it's not. I messed up, and I don't want things to be awkward between us. We're co-workers, and, well, I value your friendship. Friendship. The word stung more than I expected. Yeah, I said, forcing a smile. Me too. He nodded, then walked away, leaving me more confused than ever. That night, I couldn't sleep. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, while Jake snored softly beside me. My mind was racing, replaying everything that had happened over the past few weeks. I felt like I was drowning in guilt and confusion, and I didn't know how to make it stop. Finally, I couldn't take it anymore. I got out of bed, grabbed my phone, and went into the bathroom. I sat on the edge of the bathtub, staring at my reflection in the mirror. "What are you doing, Emily?" I whispered to myself. I didn't have an answer. I wish I could say that I went home and confessed everything to Jake and we worked through it. But I didn't. I couldn't. Instead, I buried the guilt and tried to move on. But things with Jake were never the same. Every time he kissed me, I thought about Ryan. Every time he touched me, I felt like a fraud. Eventually, I couldn't take it anymore. I broke up with Jake, telling him I needed to figure myself out. He was devastated, and I hated myself for hurting him. But I couldn't keep lying to him, or to myself. "Emily, I don't understand," Jake said, his voice breaking. "Did I do something wrong?" "No," I said, tears streaming down my face. "It's not you, Jake. It's me. I need some time to figure out who I am and what I want." He nodded, but I could see the pain in his eyes. "Okay," he said quietly. "If that's what you need." Walking away from him was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But I knew it was the right thing. I couldn't keep pretending to be someone I wasn't. As for Ryan, we never talked about what happened. He quit a few months later and moved to another state. I heard through the grapevine that he got engaged. I'm still single, still trying to figure out who I am and what I want. But one thing's for sure, I'll never forget that night in his car. It changed everything. So, Reddit, that's my story. I know I messed up, and I know I'll probably get torn apart in the comments. But I needed to get this off my chest. Thanks for listening.